So land of Ramesses to his father and brothers, just as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph furnished food to them in accordance with the number of their dependents. The famine became worse and worse, so that all the land of Egypt and Canaan were starving. Joseph collected all the money in Egypt and Canaan in exchange for grain, and he brought the money to Pharaoh's treasure houses. When the people were out of money, they came to Joseph crying again for food.
Our money is gone, but give us bread, for why should we die?
Well then, give me your livestock. I will trade you food in exchange.
So they brought their cattle to Joseph in exchange for food. Soon all the horses, flocks, herds, and donkeys of Egypt were in Pharaoh's possession. The next year they came again and said,
Our cattle are yours, and there is nothing left but our bodies and land. Why should we die? Buy us and our land, and we will be serfs to Pharaoh. We will trade ourselves for food. Then we will live, and the land won't be abandoned.
So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. All the Egyptians sold him their fields because the famine was so severe, and the land became Pharaoh's. Thus all the people of Egypt became Pharaoh's serfs. The only land he didn't buy was that belonging to the priests, for they were assigned food from Pharaoh and didn't need to sell. Then Joseph said to the people,
See, I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Here is grain. Go and sow the land. And when you harvest it, a fifth of everything you get belongs to Pharaoh. Keep 4 parts for yourselves to be used,
and as food for yourselves and for your households and little ones.
You have saved our lives. We will gladly be the serfs of Pharaoh.
So Joseph made it a law throughout the land of Egypt, and it is still the law, that Pharaoh should have as his tax 20% of all the crops except those produced on the land owned by the temples. So Israel lived in the land of Goshen, in Egypt, and soon the people of Israel began to prosper, and there was a veritable population explosion among them. Jacob lived 17 years after his arrival, so that he was 147 years old at the time of his death. As the time drew near for him to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him,
Swear to me most solemnly that you will honor this, my last request. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I am out of Egypt, and bury me beside my ancestors.
And Joseph promised.
Swear that you will do it.
And Joseph did. Soon afterwards, Jacob took to his bed. Chapter 48. One day, not long after this, word came to Joseph that his father was failing rapidly. So taking with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, he went to visit him. When Jacob heard that Joseph had arrived, he gathered his strength and sat up in the bed to greet him, and said to him,
God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, I will make you a great nation, and I will give this land of Canaan to you and to your children's children for an everlasting possession. And now, as to these 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, born here in the land of Egypt before I arrived, I am adopting them as my own, and they will inherit from me just as Reuben and Simeon will. But any other children born to you shall be your own, and shall inherit Ephraim's and Manasseh's portion from you. For your mother Rachel died after only 2 children when I came from Padan Aram, as we were just a short distance from Ephrath, and I buried her beside the road to Bethlehem.
Then Israel looked over at the 2 boys.
Are these the ones?
Yes, these are my sons whom God has given me here in Egypt.
Bring them over to me, and I will bless them.
Israel was half blind with age, so that he could hardly see. So Joseph brought the boys close to him, and he kissed them. And Israel said to Joseph,
I never thought that I would see you again, but now God has let me see your children too.
Joseph took the boys by the hand, bowed deeply to him, and led the boys to their grandfather's knees, Ephraim at Israel's left hand, and Manasseh at his right. But Israel crossed his arms as he stretched them out to lay his hands upon the boys' heads, so that his right hand was upon the head of Ephraim, the younger boy, and his left hand was upon the head of Manasseh, the older. He did this purposely. Then he blessed Joseph with this blessing.
May God, the God of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, the God who has shepherded me all my life, wonderfully bless these boys. He is the angel who has kept me from all harm. May these boys be an honor to my name and to the names of my fathers Abraham, and may they become a mighty nation.
But Joseph was upset and displeased when he saw that his father had laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, so he lifted it to place it on Manasseh's head instead.
No, Father, you've got your right hand on the wrong head. This one over here is the older. Put your right hand on him.
But his father refused.
I know what I'm doing, my son. Manasseh too shall become a great nation, but his younger brother shall become even greater.
So Jacob blessed the boys that day with this blessing.
May the people of Israel bless each other by saying, God make you as prosperous as Ephraim and Manasseh.
Note that he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph,
I am about to die, but God will be with you, and will bring you again to Canaan, the land of your fathers.
Instead of to your brothers, as your portion of that land which I took from the Amorites with my sword and with my bow.
Chapter 49. Then Jacob called together all his sons and said,
Gather around me, and I will tell you what is going to happen to you in the days to come. Listen to me, O sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my oldest son, the child of my vigorous youth. You are the head of the list in rank and in honor. But you are unruly as the wild waves of the sea, and you shall be first no longer. I am demoting you, for you slept with one of my wives, and thus dishonored me. Simeon and Levi, they are men of violence and injustice. Oh, my soul, stay away from them. May I never be a party to their wicked plans, for in their anger they murdered a man and maimed oxen just for fun. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce and cruel. Therefore I will scatter their descendants throughout Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. You shall destroy your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow before you. Judah is a young lion that has finished eating its prey. He has settled down as a lion. Who will dare to rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes, whom all people. He has chained his steed to the choicest vine and washed his clothes in wine. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell on the shores of the sea, and shall be a harbor for ships, with his borders extending to Sidon. Issachar is a strong beast of burden, resting among the saddlebags. When he saw how good the countryside was, how pleasant the land, he willingly bent his shoulder to the task and served his masters with vigor. Dan shall govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. He shall be a serpent in the path that bites the horse's heels so that the rider falls off. In your salvation, Lord. A marauding band shall stamp upon Gad, but he shall rob and pursue them. Asher shall produce rich food, fit for kings. Naphtali is a deer let loose, producing lovely fawn. Joseph is a fruitful tree beside a fountain. His branches shade the wall. He has been severely injured by those who shot at him and persecuted him, but their weapons were shattered by the mighty one of Jacob, the shepherd, the rock of Israel. May the God of your fathers, the Almighty, bless you with blessings of heaven above and of the earth beneath, blessings of the womb, blessings of the grain and flowers, blessings reaching to the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. These shall be the blessings upon the head of Joseph, who was exiled from his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf that prowls. He devours his enemies in the morning, and in the evening divides the spoil.
So these are the blessings that Israel their father blessed his 12 sons with. Then he told them,
Soon I will die. You must bury me with my fathers in the land of Canaan, in the cave in the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, the field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hethite for a burial ground. There they buried Abraham, and there they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife, and there I buried Leah. It is the cave which my grandfather Abraham purchased from the sons of Heth.
Then, when Jacob had finished his prophecies to his sons, he lay back in the bed, breathed his last, and died. Chapter 50. Joseph threw himself upon his father's body and wept over him and kissed him. Afterwards he commanded his morticians to embalm the body. The embalming process required 40 days, with a period of national mourning of 70 days. Then, when at last the mourning was over, Joseph approached Pharaoh's staff and requested them to speak to Pharaoh on his behalf.
Tell his majesty.
Father made Joseph swear to take his body back to the land of Canaan, to bury him there. Ask his majesty to permit me to go and bury my father. Assure him that I will return promptly.
Pharaoh agreed.
Go and bury your father, as you promised.
So Joseph went, and a great number of Pharaoh's counselors and assistants, all the senior officers of the land, as well as all of Joseph's people, his brothers and their families. But they left their little children and flocks and herds in the land of Goshen. So a very great number of chariots, cavalry, and people accompanied Joseph. When they arrived at Atad, meaning threshing place of brambles, beyond the Jordan River, they held a very great and solemn funeral service, with a 7-day period of lamentation for Joseph's father. The local residents, the Canaanites, renamed the place Abel Mizraim, meaning Egyptian mourners, for they said,
It is a place of very deep mourning.
So his sons did as Israel commanded them, and carried his body into the land of Canaan, and buried it there in the cave of Machpelah, the cave Abraham had bought in the field of Ephron the Hethite, close to Mamre. Then Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had accompanied him to the funeral of his father. But now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers were frightened.
Now Joseph will pay us back for all the evil we did to him,
They said. So they sent him this message.
Before he died, your father instructed us to tell you to forgive us for the great evil we did to you. We, servants of the God of your father, beg you to forgive us.
When Joseph read the message, he broke down and cried. Then his brothers came and fell down before him and said,
We are your slaves.
But Joseph told them,
Don't be afraid of me. Am I God to judge and punish you?
As God turned into good what you meant for evil. For he brought me to this high position I have today, so that I could save the lives of many people. No, don't be afraid. Indeed, I myself will take care of you and your families.
And he spoke very kindly to them, reassuring them. So Joseph and his brothers and their families continued to live in Egypt. Joseph was 110 years old when he died. He lived to see the birth of his son Ephraim's children, and the children of Machir, Manasseh's son, who played at his feet.
Soon I will die, but God will surely come and get you, and bring you out of this land of Egypt, and take you back to the land he promised, to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Then Joseph made his brothers promise, with an oath, that they would take his body back with them when they returned to Canaan. Joseph died at the age of 110, and they embalmed him, and his body was placed in a coffin in Egypt.
Exodus, chapter 1.
This is the list of the sons of Jacob who accompanied him to Egypt with their families: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. So the total number who went with him was 70, for Joseph was already there. In due season, Joseph and each of his brothers died, ending that generation. Meanwhile, their descendants were very fertile, increasing rapidly in numbers. There was a veritable pun,
so that they soon became a large nation, and they filled the land of Goshen. Then eventually, a new king came to the throne of Egypt, who felt no obligation to the descendants of Joseph. He told his people,
"These Israelis are becoming dangerous to us, because there's so many of them. Let's figure out a way to put an end to this. If we don't, and war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us and escape out of the country."
So the Egyptians made slaves of them and put brutal taskmasters over them to wear them down under heavy burdens while building the store cities Pithom and Ramses. But the more the Egyptians mistreated and oppressed them, the more the Israelis seemed to multiply. The Egyptians became alarmed and made the Hebrew slavery more bitter still, forcing them to toil long and hard in the field and to carry
mortar and brick. Then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, instructed the Hebrew midwives, their names were Shiphrah and Puah, to kill all Hebrew boys as soon as they were born, but to let the girls live. But the midwives feared God and didn't obey the king. They let the boys live too. The king summoned them before him and demanded,
"Why have you disobeyed my command and let the baby boys live?"
"Sir, the Hebrew women have their babies so quickly that we can't get there in time. They're not slow like the Egyptian women."
And God blessed the midwives. So the people of Israel continued to multiply and to become a mighty nation. And because the midwives revered God, he gave them children of their own. Then Pharaoh commanded all of his people to throw the newborn Hebrew boys into the Nile River, but the girls, he said, could live.
Chapter 2.
There were at this time a Hebrew fellow and girl of the tribe of Levi, who married and had a family, and a baby son was born to them. When the baby's mother saw that he was an unusually beautiful baby, she hid him at home for 3 months. Then, when she could no longer hide him, she made a little boat from papyrus reeds, waterproofed it with tar, put the baby in it, and laid it among the reeds along the river's edge. The baby's sister watched from a distance to see what would happen to him. Well, this is what happened. A princess, one of Pharaoh's daughters, came down to bathe in the river. And as she and her maids were walking along the riverbank, she spied the little boat among the reeds and sent one of the maids to bring it to her. When she opened it, there was a baby.
This touched her heart.
"He must be one of the Hebrew children."
Then the baby's sister approached the princess and asked her,
"Shall I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, do."
So the little girl rushed home and called her mother.
"Take this child home and nurse him for me,
The princess instructed the baby's mother.
and I will pay you well."
So she took him home and nursed him. Later, when he was older, she brought him back to the princess, and he became her son. She named him Moses, meaning to draw out, because she had drawn him out of the water. One day, many years later, when Moses had grown up and become a man, he went out to visit his fellow Hebrews and saw the terrible conditions they were under. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian knock a Hebrew to the ground, one of his own.
Moses looked this way and that to be sure no one was watching, then killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. The next day, as he was out visiting among the Hebrews again, he saw 2 of them fighting.
"What are you doing, hitting your own Hebrew brother like that?"
He said to the one in the wrong.
"And who are you? I suppose you think you are our prince and judge. And do you plan to kill me, as you did that Egyptian yesterday?"
When Moses realized that his deed was known, he was frightened. And sure enough, when Pharaoh heard about it, he ordered Moses arrested and executed. But Moses ran away into the land of Midian. As he was sitting there beside a well, 7 girls who were daughters of the priest of Midian came to draw water and fill the water troughs for their father's flocks. But the shepherds chased the girls away. Moses then came to their aid and rescued them from the shepherds and watered their flocks. When they returned to their father Reuel, he asked,
How did you so quickly today?
An Egyptian defended us against the shepherds. He drew water for us and watered the flocks.
Well, where is he? Did you just leave him there? Invite him home for supper.
Moses eventually decided to accept Reuel's invitation to live with them, and Reuel gave him one of the girls, Zipporah, as his wife. They had a baby named Gershom, meaning foreigner, for he said,
I am a stranger in a foreign land.
Several years later, the king of Egypt died. The Israelis were groaning beneath their burdens, in deep trouble because of their slavery, and weeping bitterly before the Lord. He heard their cries from heaven, and remembered his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to bring their descendants back into the land of Canaan. Looking down upon them, he knew that the time had come for their rescue.
Chapter 3.
One day, as Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, out at the Horeb, the mountain of God, suddenly the angel of Jehovah appeared to him as a flame of fire in a bush. When Moses saw that the bush was on fire and that it didn't burn up, he went over to investigate. Then God called out to him, Moses, Moses.
Who is it?
Don't come any closer, God told him. Take off your shoes, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses covered his face with his hands, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, I have seen the deep sorrows of my people in Egypt, and have heard their pleas for freedom from their harsh taskmasters. I have come to deliver them from the Egyptians, and to take them out of Egypt into a good land, a large land, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
Yes, the wail of the people of Israel has risen to me in heaven, and I have seen the heavy tasks the Egyptians have oppressed them with.
Now I am going to send you to Pharaoh, to demand that he let you lead my people out of Egypt.
But I'm not the person for a job like that.
Then God told him, I will certainly be with you, and this is the proof that I am the one who is sending you. When you have led the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God here upon this mountain. But Moses asked,
If I go to the people of Israel and tell them that their father's God has sent me, they will ask, which God are you talking about? What shall I tell them?
The sovereign God, was the reply. Just say, I am, has sent me. Yes, tell them Jehovah, the God of your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, to be used through us.
Call together all the elders of Israel, God instructed him, and tell them about Jehovah appearing to you here in this burning bush, and that he said to you, I have visited my people, and have seen what is happening to them there in Egypt. I promise to rescue them from the drudgery and humiliation they are undergoing, and to take them to the land now occupied by the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of the people of Israel will accept your message. They must go with you to the king of Egypt and tell him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us and instructed us to go 3 days' journey into the desert to sacrifice to him. Give us your permission. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, except under heavy pressure. So I will give him all the pressure he needs. I will destroy Egypt with my miracles, and then at last he will let you go. But that the Egyptians load you down with gifts when you leave, so that you will by no means go out empty-handed. Every woman will ask for jewels, silver, gold, and the finest of clothes from her Egyptian master's wife and neighbors. You will clothe your sons and daughters with the best of Egypt.
Chapter 4.
But Moses said,
They won't believe me. They won't do what I tell them to. They'll say, Jehovah never appeared to you.
What do you have there in your hand? The Lord asked him.
A shepherd's rod.
Throw it down on the ground, the Lord told him. So he threw it down, and it became a serpent, and Moses ran from it. Then the Lord told him,
He did, and it became a rod in his hand again. Do that, and they will believe you, the Lord told him. Then they will realize that Jehovah, the God of their ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has really appeared to you. Now, reach your hand inside your robe, next to your chest. And when he did, and took it out again, it was white with leprosy. Now put it in again, Jehovah said. And when he did, and took it out again, it was normal, just as before. If they don't believe the first miracle, they will the second, the Lord said. And if they don't accept you after these 2 signs, then take water from the Nile River and pour it upon the dry land, and it will turn to blood. But Moses pleaded,
Oh, Lord, I'm just not a good speaker. I never have been, and I'm not now, even after you have spoken to me, for I have a speech impediment.
Who? Jehovah asked him. Isn't it I, the Lord? Who makes a man so that he can speak or not speak, see or not see, hear or not hear? Now go ahead and do as I tell you, for I will help you to speak well, and I will tell you what to say.
Lord, please, send someone else.
Then the Lord became angry. All right, he said. Your brother Aaron is a good speaker, and he is coming here to look for you, and will be very happy when he finds you. So I will tell you what to tell him, and I will help both of you to speak well. And I will tell you what to do. He will be your spokesman to the people, and you will be as God to him, telling him what to say. And be sure to take your rod along so that you can perform the miracles I have shown you. Moses returned home and talked it over with Jethro, his father-in-law.
With your permission, I will visit my relatives. I don't even know whether they are still alive.
Go with my blessing.
Before Moses left Midian, Jehovah said to him, Don't be afraid to return to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moses took his wife and sons and put them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt, holding tightly to the rod of God. Jehovah told him, When you arrive back in Egypt, you are to go to Pharaoh and do the miracles I have shown you. But I will make him stubborn so that he will not let the people go. Then you are to tell him, Jehovah says, Israel is my eldest son, and I have commanded you to let him go away and worship me, but you have refused. And now see, I will slay your eldest son. As Moses and his family were traveling along and had stopped for the night, Jehovah appeared to Moses and threatened to kill him. Then Zipporah, his wife, took a flint off the foreskin of her young son's penis and threw it against Moses' feet, remarking disgustedly,
What a blood-smeared husband you've turned out to be.
Then God let him alone. Now Jehovah said to Aaron, Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So Aaron traveled to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, and met Moses there, and they greeted each other warmly. Moses told Aaron what God had said they must do, and what they were to say, and told him about the miracles they must do before Pharaoh. So Moses and Aaron returned to Egypt, and summoned the elders of the people of Israel to a council meeting. Aaron told them what Jehovah had said to Moses, and Moses performed the miracles as they watched. Then the elders believed that God had sent them, and when they heard that Jehovah had visited them, and had seen their sorrows, and had decided to rescue them, they all rejoiced and bowed their heads and worshipped. After this presentation to the elders, Moses and Aaron went to see Pharaoh. They told him,
We bring you a message from Jehovah, the God of Israel. He says, Let my people go, for they must make a holy pilgrimage out into the wilderness for a religious feast to worship me there.
Is that so? And who is Jehovah that I should listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know Jehovah, and I will not let Israel go.
But Aaron and Moses persisted.
The God of the Hebrews has met with us. We must take a 3-day trip into the wilderness and sacrifice there to Jehovah our God. If we don't obey him, we face death by plague or sword.
Who do you think you are? Distracting the people from their work. Get back to your jobs.
That same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the taskmasters and officers he had set over them.
Don't give the people any more straw for making bricks. However, don't reduce their production quotas by a single brick, for they obviously don't have enough to do, or else they wouldn't be talking about going out into the wilderness and sacrificing to their God. Load them with work and make them sweat. That will teach them to listen to Moses and Aaron's lies.
So the taskmasters and officers informed the people.
Pharaoh has given orders to furnish you with no more straw.
Go and find it wherever you can, but you must produce just as many bricks as before.
So the people scattered everywhere to gather straw. The taskmasters were brutal.
Fulfill your daily quota just as before,
they kept demanding. Then they whipped the Israeli work crew bosses.
Why haven't you fulfilled your quotas
either yesterday or today?
These foremen went to him.
Don't treat us like this. We are given no straw and told to make as many bricks as before, and we are beaten for something that isn't our fault. It is the fault of your taskmasters for making such unreasonable demands.
You don't have enough work, or else you wouldn't be saying, let us go and sacrifice to Jehovah. Get back to work. No straw will be given you, and you must deliver the regular quota of bricks.
Then the foremen saw that they were indeed in a bad situation. When they met Moses and Aaron waiting for them outside the palace as they came out from their meeting with Pharaoh, they swore at them.
May God judge you for making us stink before Pharaoh and his people, and for giving them an excuse to kill us.
Then Moses went back to the Lord.
Lord, how can you mistreat your own people like this? Why did you ever send me if you were going to do this to them? Ever since I gave Pharaoh your message, more and more brutal to them. And you have not delivered them at all.
Chapter 6. Now you will see what I shall do to Pharaoh, the Lord told Moses. For he must be forced to let my people go. He will not only let them go, but will drive them out of his land. I am Jehovah, the Almighty God, who appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, though I did not reveal my name Jehovah to them. And I entered into a solemn covenant with them. Under its terms I promised to give them and their descendants the land of Canaan where they were living. And now I have heard the groanings of the people of Israel in slavery now to the Egyptians, and I remember my promise. Therefore tell the descendants of Israel that I will use my mighty power and perform great miracles to deliver them from slavery,
and I will accept them as my people and be their God, and they shall know that I am Jehovah, their God, who has rescued them from the Egyptians. I will bring them into the land I promised to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It shall belong to my people. So Moses told the people what God had said, but they wouldn't listen anymore because they were too dispirited after the tragic consequence of what he had said before. Now the Lord spoke to Moses again and told him, Go back again to Pharaoh and tell him that he must let the people of Israel go.
But look, my own people won't even listen to me anymore. How can I expect Pharaoh to? I'm no orator.
Then the Lord ordered Moses and Aaron to return to the people of Israel and to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, demanding that the people be permitted to leave. These are the names of the heads of the clans of the various tribes of Israel. The sons of Reuben, Israel's Hanok,
Palu, Hezron, Carmi. The heads of the clans of the tribe of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, Sheol, whose mother was a Canaanite. These are the names of the heads of the clans of the tribe of Levi, in the order of their ages. Gershon, Kohath, Merari. Levi lived 137 years. The sons of Gershon were Libni, Shimei, and their clans. The sons of Kohath, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, Uzziel. Kohath lived 133 years. The sons of Merari, Mahli, Mushai. The above are the families of the Levites listed according to their ages. And Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister, and Aaron and Moses were their sons. Lived to the age of 137. The sons of Isar, Korah, Nepheg, Zikri. The sons of Uzziel, Mishael, Elzaphan, Sithri. Aaron married Elisheba, the daughter of Amminadab, and sister of Nashon. Their children were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, Ithamar. The sons of Korah, Asher, Elkanah, Abiasaph. These are the families within the clan of Korah. Aaron's son, Eleazar, married one of the daughters of Putiel, and Phinehas was one of his children. These are all the names of the heads of the clans of the Levites and the families within the clans. Aaron and Moses, included in that list, are the same Aaron and Moses to whom Jehovah said, Lead all the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt.
and who went to Pharaoh to ask permission to lead.
And to whom the Lord said, I am Jehovah. Go in and give Pharaoh the message I have given you. This is that Moses who argued with the Lord.
I can't do it. I'm no speaker. Why should Pharaoh listen to me?
Chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, See, I have appointed you as my ambassador to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your spokesman. Tell Aaron everything I say to you, and he will announce it to Pharaoh, demanding that the people of Israel be allowed to leave Egypt. But I will cause Pharaoh to stubbornly refuse, and I will multiply my miracles in the land of Egypt. Yet even then Pharaoh won't listen to you. So I will crush Egypt with a final, major disaster, and then lead my people out. The Egyptians will find out that I am indeed God when I show them my power. Let my people go.
So Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83 at this time of their confrontation with Pharaoh. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Pharaoh will demand that you show him a miracle to prove that God has sent you. When he does, Aaron is to throw down his rod, and it will become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went in to see Pharaoh, and performed the miracle, as Jehovah had instructed them. Aaron threw down his rod before Pharaoh and his court, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh called in his sorcerers, the magicians of Egypt, and they were able to do the same thing with their magical arts. Their rods became serpents too, but Aaron's serpent swallowed their serpents. Pharaoh's heart was still hard and stubborn, and he wouldn't listen, just as the Lord had predicted. The Lord pointed this out to Moses, that Pharaoh was unmoved, and that he would continue to refuse to let the people go. Nevertheless, the Lord said, Go back to Pharaoh in the morning, to be there as he goes down to the river. Stand beside the river bank and meet him there, holding in your hand the rod that turned into a serpent. Say to him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me back to demand that you let his people go to worship him in the wilderness. You wouldn't listen before, and now the Lord says this, You are going to find out that I am God, for I have instructed Moses to hit the water of the Nile with his rod, and the river will turn to blood. The fish will die, and the river will stink, so that the Egyptians will be unwilling to drink it. Then the Lord instructed Moses, Tell Aaron to point his rod toward the waters of Egypt, all its rivers, canals, marshes, and reservoirs, and even the water stored in bowls and pots in the homes will turn to blood. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them. As Pharaoh and all of his officials watched, Aaron hit the surface of the Nile with the rod, and the river turned to blood. The fish died, and the water became so foul that the Egyptians couldn't drink it, and there was blood throughout the land of Egypt. But then the magicians of Egypt used their secret arts, and they too turned water into blood. So Pharaoh's heart remained hard and stubborn, and he wouldn't listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had predicted, and he returned to his palace unimpressed. Then the Egyptians dug wells along the river bank to get drinking water, for they couldn't drink from the river. Chapter 8. The following week, the Lord said to Moses, Go in again to Pharaoh and tell him, Jehovah says, Let my people go and worship me. If you refuse, I will send frogs across your land from one border to the other. The Nile River will swarm with them, and they will come out into your houses, even into your bedrooms and right into your beds. Every home in Egypt will be filled with them. They will fill your ovens and your kneading bowls. You and your people will be immersed in them. Then the Lord said to Moses, Instruct Aaron to point the rod toward all the rivers, streams, and pools of Egypt, so that there will be frogs in every corner of the land. Aaron did. And frogs covered the nation. But the magicians did the same with their secret arts, and they too caused frogs to come up upon the land. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and begged,
Plead with God to take the frogs away. I will let the people go and sacrifice to him.
Be so kind as to tell me when you want them to go, and I will pray that the frogs will die at the time you specify.
Do it tomorrow.
All right. It shall be as you have said. Then you will know that there is no one like the Lord our God. All the frogs will be destroyed, except those in the river.
So Moses and Aaron went out from the presence of Pharaoh. And Moses pleaded with the Lord concerning the frogs he had sent. And the Lord did as Moses promised. Dead frogs covered the countryside and filled the nation's homes. They were piled into great heaps, making a terrible stench throughout the land. But when Pharaoh saw that the frogs were gone, he hardened his heart and refused to let the people go, just as the Lord had predicted. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron to strike the dust with his rod, and it will become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." So Moses and Aaron did as God commanded, and suddenly lice infested the entire nation, covering the Egyptians and their animals. Then the magicians tried to do the same,
but this time they failed.
"This is the finger of God,"
they exclaimed to Pharaoh. But Pharaoh's heart was hard and stubborn, and he wouldn't listen to them, just as the Lord had predicted. Next, the Lord told Moses, "Get up early in the morning and meet Pharaoh as he comes out to the river to bathe, and say to him, 'Jehovah says, let my people go and worship me. If you refuse, I will send swarms of flies throughout Egypt. Your homes will be filled with them, and the ground will be covered with them. But it will be very different in the land of Goshen where the Israelis live. No flies will be there. Thus you will know that I am the Lord God of all the earth, for I will make a distinction between your people and my people. All this will happen tomorrow.'" And Jehovah did as he had said, so that there were terrible swarms of flies in Pharaoh's palace, and in it.
Pharaoh hastily summoned Moses and Aaron and said,
"All right, go ahead and sacrifice to your God. But do it here in the land. Don't go out into the wilderness."
"That won't do. Our sacrifices to God are hated by the Egyptians, and if we do this right here before their eyes, they will kill us. We must take a 3-day trip into the wilderness and sacrifice there to Jehovah our God, as he commanded us."
"All right, go ahead. But don't go too far away. Now, hurry and plead with God for me."
"Yes, I will ask him to cause the swarms of flies to disappear. But I am warning you that you must never again lie to us by promising to let the people go and then changing your mind."
So Moses went out from Pharaoh and asked the Lord to get rid of the flies. And the Lord did as Moses asked, and caused the swarms to disappear, so that not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart again and did not let the people go.
Chapter 9. "Go back to Pharaoh," the Lord commanded Moses, "and tell him, 'Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, demands that you let his people go to sacrifice to him. If you refuse, the power of God will send a deadly plague to destroy your cattle, horses, donkeys, camels, flocks, and herds. But the plague will affect only the cattle of Egypt. None of the Israeli herds and flocks will even be touched.' The Lord announced that the plague would begin the very next day, and it did. The next morning all the cattle of the Egyptians began dying, but not one of the Israeli herds was even sick. Pharaoh sent to see whether it was true that none of the Israeli cattle were dead. Yet when he found out that it was so, even then his mind remained unchanged, and he refused to let the people go. Then Jehovah said to Moses and Aaron, "Take ashes from the kiln. Moses, toss it into the watches. It will spread like fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and cause boils to break out upon people and animals alike throughout the land." So they took ashes from the kiln and went to Pharaoh. As he watched, Moses tossed it toward the sky, and it became boils that broke out on men and animals alike throughout all Egypt. And the magicians couldn't stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils appeared upon them too. But Jehovah hardened Pharaoh in his stubbornness, so that he refused to listen, just as the Lord had predicted to Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and tell him, 'Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, says, let my people go to worship me. This time I am going to send a plague that will really speak to you and to your servants and to all the Egyptian people. To you there is no other God in all the earth.